Happy August, everyone. Welcome back to episode 14 of The Dark Room, where two blind cinephiles illuminate the sighted. I'm Lee Pugsley.
I'm Alex Howard.
And this is a podcast hosted by two legally blind guys for film lovers of all abilities. And today we have a very special guest with us. Alex, why don't you introduce him?
He is in shows such as Sons of Anarchy and most of the different NCIS variations, but currently he is in The Beanie Bubble on Apple TV Plus and has an upcoming film called Sunrise. How's it going, Kurt?
It's going great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being with us. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. I guess to start off, if you want to talk about your disability and how, I know you had an accident, how that happened and how you came to sort of use that in your acting rather than, I know a lot of people with disabilities, like there's a lot of acceptance and, you have to go through a whole phase of mourning, whether it be eyesight or a leg or whatever it may be. But you seem to really own it and use it to your advantage. So I wanted to know your process with all of that.
Yeah, so about 15 years ago, I lost my leg in a motorcycle accident, tore my pelvis in half, tore my bladder in half, broke 7 vertebrae, collapsed my lungs, broke all my right ribs and a bunch of other things, and spent about 3.5 months in a hospital bed and then another year recovery and going through treatment rehab. And then in the film business, it took me about 5, maybe 6 years to start considering that my disability was actually my advantage. Like it was actually a quality, not a distraction or not a detriment. And once I made that psychological change, I think a lot of things started changing for me, because instead of walking in the room going like, hey, I got to hide it because this is what I think people think, or I gotta try to cover it up or make up for it or overcome it or all these other stupid things I thought, which are totally normal to think, but I just thought of it incorrectly. And so once I changed that to being, overtly confident and proud of it, then other people started reacting in the same manner. So it's sort of the same adage of, dress for success, act as if. So once I said, no, my leg missing is awesome, everyone else started going, oh, it's kind of awesome, isn't it? And then thus, I think people started going, oh, Kurt, yeah, he's awesome. His leg's awesome. Cool, we could use that. I think that's kind of how it turned in my mind over the years.
Yeah, and I think when I met you at Real Abilities, I think if you want to tell the story about how you got your role on Sons of Anarchy, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. It's got to be up there with Breaking Bad for me. But if you want to tell the story of how you got that role, I think it was what you were just talking about, the confidence really comes out in that.
Yeah, it was really interesting because Sons of Anarchy was a show I really wanted to be on, right? I'm a motorcycle guy. I can ride motorcycles. I relearned how to ride motorcycles with one leg. And I tried to get to everybody. I tried to get through casting, who are lovely people, but it just wasn't working. I tried to get through the producers, and that wasn't working. And so I ended up getting at a motorcycle charity event. And the Sons of Anarchy guys were there. And we did a whole big ride together. And then at the end was a little party. And I was able to sneak into the VIP section, which I literally wasn't allowed in, with the help of Aline Grubba. I don't know if you know her. She's great. But she helped me sneak in, and I got into the VIP section. And up there was the showrunner, writer, creator, Kurt Sutter. And I was like, there he is across the room. You've been trying to talk to people in this damn TV show for 3 years. How am I going to get in? And so I walk up to him and I go, here's your moment. Here's your moment. And, Kurt is a kind of a hard man. He's a tough character. And so I go up to him and I'm like, hey, Kurt, my name's Kurt Yeager. I just want to say that your TV show is absolutely amazing. You guys captured the Northern California Motorcycle Club, down to the shoes that Jax wears. He's wearing, tennis shoes, white kicks instead of boots. That's so NorCal. He's like, thanks, man. I'm glad you noticed. I'm like, absolutely, brother. And I go, but you're just missing one thing. And he goes, what? What am I missing? And I go, every single club has a guy go down and rip their leg off. And I pulled up my pant leg and showed him I had one leg. And I go, here's my card, which was my actor's card. And I gave it to him. And here's my card. I'm not going to tell you how good of an actor I am, but I can ride motorcycles better than all your actors. Have a good day. And so 6 months later, I got a call and they're like, hey, we want you to audition for this role that was written for you.
That's awesome.
That was it. Yeah. So that's the same idea, right? It's I considered how my disability would be an advantage for the storytelling of the show, not just, hey, I want to be on your show. I was trying to figure out something that actually made their show better. And if you present it that way, then they think, oh shit, or oh shoot, you're right. That is a good idea. Well, I might as well give the good idea to the guy who came up with the good idea.
Yeah, and then he writes you a role. That's really awesome.
Exactly.
I really admire that confidence, and just kind of a point of relatability to touch on a few things that you said. So I'm a visually impaired actor myself, and when I've always been visually impaired, but my vision has gotten worse over the years. And when my vision started to get worse, I actually walked away from acting for a little while I was trying to hide my disability. And then as the landscape kind of changed, I kind of realized exactly what you were saying, that it's like being visually impaired doesn't have to be a hindrance or a crutch. It could actually be a, I don't know if I want to use the term calling card, but something I can use to my advantage to stand out in auditions and with casting directors and all of that. And yeah, it took me a while to build up my confidence, but now, like, when I go into an audition room, I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I have something to offer. I have a unique way of life to present a character through, and take it or leave it. But I'm not apologizing anymore for who I am. So I love your mentality and your outlook on the way that you approach acting with a disability.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's 100% true. And it takes a while to figure out that's the psychological construct. We create a lot of times our own prisons, right? Whether it's a confidence, and it's inside of disabilities and it's outside of disabilities. You know what I mean? Like, if you're like really shy and meek and you want to date a girl or a guy, it's like, they might be attracted. But if you're super confident, then they're like, oh, what's he confident about? It's like that kind of a thing. If you're confident about what you have to offer and you recognize that like your disability and your experience with it is unique, even amongst other people who have the same disability, your perspective is unique. Once you realize that's an asset, just like any other so on and so forth, like skill or quality, like, are you 7 foot tall? Are you 5'1"? Like, those are just, physical or intellectual or experiential attributes. When you realize it's just another attribute, okay, that's what makes you different. That's what makes you interesting, and that's what makes you stand out, which makes you memorable. If you're memorable, then you'll work. And
And I think that's sort of what we're going for with the podcast too, because there aren't many podcasts out there with low vision people talking about movies. So yeah, we're trying to use our unique perspective with our low vision to influence the entertainment industry.
Well, like, let me ask you guys a question, just because it's interesting to me, because, like, you can ask me about my leg and acting and all the rest of it, but like, how is it that low vision people enjoy, visual entertainment? Like, how does that function? Like, help me understand that.
So we use something called audio description.
Okay.
It describes the action on screen when between lines of dialogue so we can understand what's going on. But I've always loved movies. When my eyesight was better, I did also. And it was just like, I'm not going to give up this passion of mine just because I can't see. So thank God the audio description exists so I can keep enjoying it.
Nice.
What would you say, Lee?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with that. Like, audio description has been a game changer. I mean, you look at 20 years ago, nothing was audio described. And now I would say we'll be generous and say maybe 75% of content from mainstream studios is audio described now. And that's really been a game changer for the way that we consume media. There's a common myth that like blind and low vision people don't watch movies or TV shows. And, it's really not true. There's, blind and low vision viewers love watching media. It just needs to be accessible. So we feel like we're getting the whole experience, or we're getting an experience and as much of a whole experience as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I also go see a lot of live theater. I'm a big theater guy as well. And they actually do like live audio description for theater productions. It's not as developed as it could be yet, but we're getting there and there's steps of progress. So, I'm grateful for that as well.
That's good. Like, how well is it described? Because, when I look at captions, just in general, it's like I'm watching captions, which I know are not audio descriptions, but when I'm watching sometimes to see, I'm like, man, if I was hard of hearing or deaf, these captions wouldn't be very accurate. They wouldn't be very good. Like I was like, man, I want to make these better, you know? So how is the audio description? Is it pretty good?
It depends on the project, I would say, but generally speaking, especially from the major studios, I do think it is pretty good. And like, for example, what it'll do is it'll be like, you'll see a scene and it'll be like, Sarah walks across the living room. She picks up a coffee cup. On the coffee cup is the words, I love mom. If that's something that's, important to the story, a little like textual detail that we need to know for later. They do a good job overall. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this podcast is also, I mean, doing movie criticism and punditry, but also, criticizing the audio description and trying to improve that where it can be improved. Like The Flash just came out and they finally started describing the cameo, saying, oh, Nicolas Cage as Superman, or whatever it is. Like saying the actor's name really goes a long way for enjoying the cameos, and they'd never done that before.
Ah,
So,
yeah.
there are different things that they continue to improve on as the years go on.
That's great. I
Yeah.
mean, one thing I always tell people all the time is I think it's helpful whenever I think about writing a film or producing or directing it. I know when it comes to the creation of it, I tell people all the time how important like audio is and how important the quality of audio is just from a construct. And they go, "What do you mean?" I tell friends of mine to watch their favorite films, but they turn off the visual elements and they just listen to it. And if they just listen to it, they get a whole new experience for their film. And it actually helps them create better film in the future. So it's really an interesting thing that I never really considered good audio description versus bad audio description and what that would sound like, and what the experience would be for you guys.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different ways it can be bad, whether it's the mix, if the audio description is too loud, then the rest of it are too low. And then there are ways they say things that they emote. I hate it when audio describers emote. That's not as common now, but when it first started,
Mm.
it would get like excited, and I was like, that's my job. What do you?" But yeah, there are definitely varied ways that it can be good or bad. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. That I think I had heard that too in film school, that when you're making a film, if you watch it with no visuals and see how it is, it's important.
It makes so much sense, honestly.
Yeah.
I did have a question for you about the Beanie Bubble. We both watched it over the weekend, and I know your role. Like, I mean, you hold your own against Elizabeth Banks, which is awesome. But was that role? Were they looking for someone in a wheelchair, or were they just like? I thought it was great that it wasn't apparent that that character was written in a wheelchair, and they just chose you because you're a good actor. I wasn't sure if that's how it was.
Yeah, they were looking for anybody with any disability and then seeing how they could utilize it. So I know they auditioned a lot of different people because they wanted something for that role. And then when I did, I said, look, let's say he's, had a bad motorcycle accident and, lost the leg and had that too. Plus, maybe had like, because when I had my accident, there was a lot of lung damage. You know what I mean? Like, I collapsed my lungs. So it took a while for me to be able to get back up to par. So they loved that idea, incorporated the rest of it in. The only thing I told them, and I said, hey, look, I always come to a project and I want to help you guys make it as good as I can. So I'm happy to play the quote unquote character that has a disability as long as it's just juxtaposed to strength. So this character isn't like, oh, help me, honey, all the time. He's like, listen, if you're going to cheat, F you. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a bit of that then. Fine, go, get out of here. What do you, like that kind of a vibe. So one, thank you for saying the performance I did held my own against Elizabeth, because she's just a beast of an actor. She is great. That makes me feel pretty good to hear that you guys thought that I did well.
Really solid work that you did in the Beanie Bubble. And that also kind of triggers a question for me too. I'm curious to know, where do you feel like, obviously disability representation for films and TV has improved a lot over the years. Where do you feel like it's at now, and what would your dream be to see it progress forward to?
Well, I'm a weird amalgamation of positive and negative. I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. So I think that the amount of representation has improved by, let's say, double, which is a lot. But since representation is so atrocious, doubling a 16th of a percent really isn't doubling much. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not anywhere near where it should be. If 20% of the population has a disability and less than 0.5% of on-camera talent is actually disabled, then we're so far off the mark, it's ridiculous. So I think we have a massive uphill battle. I still think we have a massively huge road. And I don't want to say we're doing well, so because I don't want to congratulate people who are only doing the bare minimum. I expect a lot more because I want every single person I know who's talented to be working. And I think that most of my people who are talented aren't working nearly enough that they should be. So where we should be is having writers and producers and directors and A-list talent and executives at the studios and the network who are all disabled, not one person who's helping DEI. You know what I mean? Like that I see that the incorporation of people with disabilities in the film and television business should be akin to the incorporation of disabilities in the corporate hiring structure and the different positions that people have, which is, as you guys know, just as atrocious in the corporate world as it is in Hollywood. So we've got a far way to go.
I agree with that. And yeah, you make a good point that it really has to start with the people that are making these creative decisions. That's the only way that, you know, the acting world is going to change in terms of representation, is if those people are coming from different walks of life and they can bring to the table their own experiences and see the value of, you know, people with different walks of life being represented, and just seeing once again how creative and how fun storytelling can be with those unique perspectives too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
No, I completely agree. Were you an actor before your accident or no?
No, I never. I did like some little things here and there, but it wasn't a career. I was actually getting my master's in hydrogeology, so I was doing groundwater science and doing research at Berkeley for fluvial experimentations for dam removal. So I had a whole different life that I was doing. And before that, I was a professional athlete in the X Games. So I did double flips over 50-foot jumps on a BMX bike.
Wow.
So I've lived a colorful life so far. I think it's those other experiences that allows me to kind of look at the film business as a person who's already been at the highest levels in two other fields, to kind of consider the way it is in this field from a different perspective. Like, I'm not trying to go from the bottom and work my way all the way through. Like, I've already been a professional athlete and I've already been, you know, at a hard science kind of capacity. So when I look at the film business, I look at it from a scientific perspective, which is like Occam's razor, like looking at everything, eliminating everything, and what's left must be true. It's like that kind of like adage where it's a little more ruthless on its approach. Like, science doesn't like or dislike something. It just finds out what the facts are and what the facts aren't. And so that's kind of my approach in the film business. So the fact that I'm saying like they're not doing very good for disability representation isn't like me being a pessimist. It's just that's the fact, right? And so great. Can we do better? Of course. But yeah, I wasn't really much of an actor or anything before. I did some stunts here and there for TV shows and films because I, you know, was a BMXer, but I never really thought, oh, I could totally be an actor. I didn't think it was for people like me, you know.
What was the thing that changed your mind with that after the accident?
Well, I had a near-death experience, so I kind of was like, what do you really want to do out of life? And I said, I want to go for the hardest thing that I think I'm going to enjoy the most and not care about the results. And so I put my ego aside. And I don't mean like ego, like, you know, cockiness. I meant ego, like fear of failure. I put the fear of failure out of my ego aside and said, you know what, if you fail or not, you better try. And so I just went for it. That kind of helped. I mean, every single person except my best friend, Jessica Denning, every single person I said, I'm going to be acting, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to produce and switch careers after my accident. They all thought I hit my head too hard. So it kind of changed my perspective. I mean, like, I was like, you know, screw it. Like, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail big.
I like that philosophy. One of my philosophies in life is live without regrets. And I'd rather know that I tried my whole life to pursue something I'm passionate about, even if I fail, than sitting back, like 10 years from now and wondering what would have happened if ...
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agree.
You've been on NCIS and Sons of Anarchy and Good Doctor and these, kind of guest roles where normally you would get residuals for when your episode airs. But what is your experience with that? And have you seen a shift in your residuals since things have shifted over to streaming?
Yeah, the streaming model is, a 10-year-old contract or whatever it is for when the streamers were tiny and they weren't really, didn't have the numbers to back up um, uh, their model. They needed to pay less for content in their growing phase. Well, I don't know if you know this, but the streamers show more content to more people around the globe than ABC, NBC, and CBS combined. Those three networks pay higher residuals than even cable or HBO or Showtime or anything like that. So the fact that they are now in a position of great power means that they should be paying the same relative percentage of residuals as the entities that they are akin to. So it's really pathetic for the digital outlets, the streamers, to mince words about what they can and can't pay. Now, that being said, these are corporate entities that their sole mission is to create the most amount of profits for their shareholders. If they didn't fight this, they wouldn't be doing their jobs. So I don't see this as being something abhorrent or inappropriate for them to do. They should, and they should lose the battle, but they should fight. And then we should fight stronger. And then they said, see, corporate shareholders, we did the best we could. We fought this and we lost. That's actually sort of the system. And that's why it works. And that's why, having a group of employees argue and be able to strike when they need to is important as well. And I think that's where you get sort of the right kind of dynamic where two entities with nearly opposing goals have to be able to talk and strike and argue out in the open so that everyone can see it, and then everyone make a choice about whether or not they want to keep their subscriptions for Netflix or they cancel them and support. And that's like the best model, I think, for an open dialogue. So it makes sense to me why they're fighting it. I just hope they lose, because I think they're wrong for sort of their arguments. They're right for corporate profits, but they're wrong for why they shouldn't pay lower profits.
Yeah, and for people that are listening that aren't sure exactly what we're talking about, for residuals, for the way it used to be with TV is whenever your episode would air, you would get a check in the mail for it airing. But now that you can literally watch all of these shows anytime, they're always available. There's no real formula for, okay, if this many people watch this episode, you get paid a certain amount, right? They're pretty much fighting to make that formula now. Is that correct, Kurt?
Yeah, it's kind of like this on network and cable. You get paid, right? You get paid to shoot the episode. Then that payment is the payment that you got paid for it airing the first time. Then when it airs a second time, like on reruns or things like that, because they're using your image again and using your work, they pay you a percentage of what you got paid the first time. Not a full amount, but a percentage. So it's like kind of fair, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna, all right, we used your labor, so we're gonna give you some money back for that residual labor in your image. And then as they do a third showing and a fifth showing, that numeric goes further and further down. For streamers, that percentage was contractually lower so that the streamers could build their networks up. And now they don't want to pay that. They don't want to pay the increased fee. They were paying a tiny fraction of that, but it was being viewed by 10 times more viewers. So we're like, hey guys, you can't do that. And they're like, no, we don't want to. But also the residual rates haven't gone up even according to inflationary numbers. Like, so residuals overall are down. Then the streamers were also like, well, we don't want to pay even a higher percentage. Who cares about increasing it overall? And the other arguments are, we don't want to increase your pay of per diem. That's where when you're shooting on location and often staying in hotels that don't even have a kitchen, and they're like, here's $50. Here's $50 to eat on the weekend. You're like, $50? Like, where am I gonna breakfast, lunch, and dinner plus the Uber to go get somewhere? Like, $50? Like, that was 1990 money. Like, so we're saying, no, you gotta pay more. And they're like, no, we're not gonna pay that either. So there's that, plus the AI, plus a lot of other things that they're arguing. So it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, if I were in charge, I wouldn't want to pay more either. So I
Right.
get it. It's just if all my people revolted, I'd be like, all right. Now, personally, I like taking care of my people, on productions, so that there is never a revolt. And I also know, because of my near-death experience, I can't take more money with me. So I only need enough to function in a higher level. So, I'm okay with personally paying better wages than a lot of other people pay from a production side. But, I understand people who haven't had near death. They think that they're going to live forever and they need more money so that they can live cooler and better lifestyles. I mean, the people who are very, very rich play a completely different lifestyle game than us. And we think it's just atrocious, but relatively they're playing it against each other. So it's relative to them. Like, it's not saying it's right. It is at least trying to understand it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on AI and kind of the protections that the Screen Actors Guild is fighting for against AI usage?
Yeah, AI is a really interesting thing. They wanted to pay actors, especially background actors, 1 day rate for them to show up and film and have their entire likenesses scanned to be put in a database to be used in perpetuity in all the universe for all time for free. It's like, wait, what did you guys just say? So I think that is not only what's the right term without cursing, it is egregious and completely unwarranted and absolutely dastardly. I think that the studios should be I don't know, raked over the coals for something like that. I think it's horrible. Now, if it's a big actor who wants their likeness used and scanned, and then they get paid for it as if they were filming it, and then they do a voiceover, I mean, that's technology. You know what I mean? That's like people with horses being upset that cars were coming into an existence. Stuff like that is okay, but everyone deserves payment for use of their likeness as if it was the same day of work or payment, because they're being used for that profit motive. It's like the same way that I would, always pay a writer who wrote something, and I created a TV show. That writer gets paid for every single episode that is created, whether that writer writes about it or not. And so AI has that for actors, but it also has it for writers. But it also has it for animators and everything else. I mean, there was an episode of South Park. I don't know if you guys heard about this. AI, someone created through AI and a bunch of different AI programs, an episode of South Park about AI that was fully from AI. That was voices, that was animation, that was story, that was everything.
Did they?
And it's pretty impressive. And they put it out for free on YouTube.
Huh.
It's a little like, holy cow. It's good, but it's not great. You know what I mean? So, AI will have its limitations. It'll end up becoming a tool that people use. It's just who uses it, I think, is where the fulcrum point of the problem is. Studios can't use it to get rid of writers, but writers can use it to make writing better. Stuff like that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against AI by any means. I think that there's a lot of benefits to it. I see the benefits of, productivity and efficiency, and how it can be like you said, a helpful tool to make things better. But I do think that some of the abuses or taking advantage of with AI are also risk factors that, when put in the wrong hands, could be very detrimental and damaging to other people.
Yeah. I think one thing that, always like sort of not like just straight up like bothers me, but like a lot of times we put like the onus on other people to do the right thing. Like these
Mhm.
big corporate conglomerates are going to do the right thing for me. Why? I can only do the right things for me. And I wish that people understood the responsibility of their dollar more. I wish that they understood that they have the power and responsibility to turn off that do not adhere to uh, uh, payment structures, its ability to go without Mission Impossible 7 because this company is not supporting them. Like, this is not helping the average person. If, for instance, Nike is using slave labor in China and child labor in order to make your shoes, stop buying their damn shoes until they actually stop doing that practice. Like, what? Come on, guys. You know what I mean? But no one realizes that they have the responsibility and should have the responsibility to do that. It's the same thing. Like, I have a lot of people who are like, man, I can't even really listen to radio that much because they always play the same songs. And I'm like, you're listening to the same station. You can change the station, man. Change the station. You know what I mean? Like, change your behavior and take leadership in your own life to affect change. For good or bad, look what happened to Bud Light. For good or bad, look what happened to like Chick-fil-A. For good or bad, look what happened when people actually said, no, that's enough. Like, that's the point. Like, that's what we should do. And I think they give the responsibility of leadership to someone else. Like, they should do that instead of being like, what can I do? The JFK quote, what can I do for my country? And like, not what can I do for me? What can you do to affect this change that might even make you not happy? Well, I should drop Netflix then. I should drop this. I should drop that. Or I shouldn't because I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, be honest with yourself. I think that I wish more people thought of that, or at least had a guide where we could all shut it off at once together. Like, we're going to shut it off for a month and make them come to the table.
You think people should not be going to the movies as much, not be streaming as much right now to support the writers and actors if they do support them?
Yeah, I think that if they understood that would help support, and then it became apparent to everyone that was actually something to do, I think it would be extremely helpful. Now, will people do it? I don't know.
Have you seen anyone that's kind of promoted that idea of like everyone cancel their streamers and stop going to the movies? Because I agree that people are looking to someone else to take responsibility rather than realizing their own responsibility and ownership that they have the power over. But I wonder if, more people were to kind of promote this idea of, if we all do this together, like cancel subscriptions for a month or take a stand and, you know, boycott the movies for a little bit until these deals are made, that will make a statement. Maybe that would bring it more to the forefront of people's minds, because it would be great if people came to those realizations on their own, but it seems like maybe people need a little bit more coaxing to get there.
Yeah, I think you need sort of like the construct of most social media platforms. Like you got to have like a reinforcing dopamine effect in the brain, right? Like you got to be like, I'm canceling this for this reason and I want someone to know about it. People have a hard time doing the right thing or anything if they're not going to get something out of it. And that's not evil, it's just human nature. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to pick up trash, right? Like outside of my own neighborhood, unless I don't like the way trash looks. If I don't mind trash being out in my neighborhood, I don't care if it's there. So there's gotta be some really valuable way to showcase to somebody why this is important and how they get value out of it. I think that more I've seen to your first question, I've seen people posting about it. I've seen a few actors and producers saying we should cancel this, and you know, some other people for political reasons canceling some of the other streamers, and I've seen some of that stuff around. It's just once the groundswell happens, like no one was going to give to ALS. The thing that everyone got out of that was a funny video of dumping ice on their friends saying, hey, but we're also giving money. Like that was a social media construct where everyone got something out of it. Like if I asked you to donate $100 to a charity that is going to bring film awareness and performers with disabilities to be in film and television, you'd be like, all right. And I never told you the good side of it. I never made you feel good about it. I never showed you the good things we were going to do. You wouldn't give. You'd be like, well, I just gave $100 into the black hole, you know, into the ether. So I think that like you really have to build the model of why people would want to do it on top of it's the right reason.
I've also heard the perspective of like, I think it was Chris Carr talking. She's an actress in SAG too. I think she was saying don't cancel because it needs to. They need to show like how much money they can pay. I think if that makes sense. Like the more people that cancel, the more they'll think like, see, we can afford this. But I don't.
Nah, I take the opposite, because you don't need current numbers to prove historical numbers.
Mhm,
Like you don't need money this month to show what they can pay. Like it's like
mhm.
telling them, say it's like handing someone $100 again and going like, please pay me. See, I told you, you pay me. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
more
yeah,
like, hey, remember the last 7 years I paid you $100?
yeah,
I just turned that off. Like there's 7 years of history of how much they can pay. We don't need to prove that over and again. Like I don't see
yeah.
why that's imperative. I
There's
say turn off
also,
the spigot.
there's also that fund. I think Dwayne Johnson gave like what 7 figures to the
Hmm.
first fund the other day,
Yeah.
last week.
Well, you look, the majority of Americans don't have $5,000 in a savings account to get them through a hard time. So I'm assuming the majority of actors are in the same boat. You know what I mean? Personally, I think it's bad money management on most people. I think I see it differently because I'm like, guys, like, stop going to Disneyland. That is a luxury. That is not something you should be doing every year. Like, why are you spending $1,000? But we're supposed to have fun, not at the expense of your future. Like, what are you doing? So, you know, but at the same time, that is a fact. So, you know, people are going to be hurting because they don't have the money to get them through potentiality of the next 6 months of a strike. I mean, literally, executives at the streamers said, yeah, we're just going to make this strike go on long enough until the writers and actors are having to lose their homes, because they know that these actors and writers don't have the funds to get through their financial responsibilities for 6 months.
Do you have a day job next to acting, or do you primarily act for a living?
I only act for a living. I write and produce as well, but I don't do anything else. I haven't since I started, 15-ish years ago. But I'm also, you know, my father taught me about money management early when I was young. So I got taught lessons about like saving money and what to do with money and how to spend money and how to think of it differently than most people. And one of the early examples he gave me is just like, look, let's say you want to buy a new TV. You want to buy one. And the brand new TV is $3,000. You can do the wrong things or the right things. The wrong thing is to go buy that TV and put it on credit. The wrong thing is to go into your bank account and spend the money and buy the TV. The right thing to do is to, from that moment you decide you want a television, to work a certain amount of months, knowing that you're saving money into the future for a television. So let's say you can save $500 towards that television, which means, it'll take you, 6 months, right? So you're like, okay, it's going to take me 6 months to save for this television. One of three things will happen if you do this. One, you'll save for 6 months, and that television that was $3,000 has gone on sale. So now you're only spending $2,500 to get that TV. Woo, you save some money. Two, the new model of that television came out and it's $3,000. And yeah, I bought the most up-to-date, technologically advanced television, so it should last you even longer into the future. It's good investment, and you spent your money. Or three, you'll go, man, that took a lot of work to save $3,000. I don't need a stinking TV. And you got 3,000 more bucks to put in the bank to keep you safe.
Yeah.
That's the right model of spending. Never use a credit card unless you have the money to pay that credit card off that month. And never, ever, ever go into your bank account to pay for anything like a big purchase, unless it's an emergency, because your bank account is literally supposed to be an emergency fund, not a piggy bank that you can pilfer all the way down to zero. That's it. That's how you live. And I've always lived like that since I was like 14. You do that, you always have more and more money in the bank. You live cheaply, you live poorly. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going on vacation. I'm like, have fun. I'm going to the park down the street to have a barbecue for free. Like, you just start doing free stuff. So I think that, that's why I don't have another job outside of acting. I mean, like I said, I write and I produce, I raise money, and I sold a show to Sony that I wrote, and then I have a couple of feature films that are with producers right now, and I've made projects and raised money for projects and whatnot, and I make money from that. But that's not really like, if I didn't have acting, like, I would need to get a job, but acting pays for all the bills.
Are you in the WGA as well?
I am not, because I've not gotten to the place where my shows have gotten to air. So the projects have to actually get through completion. I mean, you could sign up and get it because you sold a movie, but like, I don't need to join a union that I'm the same way I didn't join SAG the first couple of jobs I got. Like, everyone's like, I got to join SAG. I got to join SAG. And I went, I'm going to not join SAG until I have to. So I avoided joining SAG as long as I could so that I could do every single job under the sun. So I try to avoid joining unions until I'm really prepared, because it's like, I was playing, high school baseball, and everyone's like, I want to be in the major leagues. And I'm like, look, I'm happy playing high school baseball right now because I'm still learning.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Like, I'm SAG eligible, but I'm waiting to join. I mean, obviously during this time, I'm not going to join, but, I'm going to wait to join until, there's more of a reason to join, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would wait until you have to, until you're must join, which is, I think, your third speaking role, if it's still the same.
Yeah, I think it is very similar now. And, it's like rules are, few and far between for, people that fit the like blind and low vision quota. So hopefully that'll change soon. And like, I can start being seen for just like roles of, any type, that aren't specifically like blind or low vision written. It's just, you're the father, you're the friend, you're the whatever,
Yeah.
and the script doesn't reference the fact that there's a visual impairment or that they're blind. It's just, this is the way of life that they come from that brings, once again,
Yeah.
perspective to the table in that way. That's where I hope, and that's where I'd love to see the industry go as well in terms of representation, is that it's not roles specifically written for specific types of people in that way all the time, but it's just like, let's just bring everyone in and they play the role.
Yeah, I think that's where we have to get to, and yet we're very, very, very far away from that.
Being in SAG and in your circles, what is the sense of how long you think the strike will go, or how long are you guys prepping for it to go?
I mean, I really don't know. Everything that everyone is saying is postulation, because the AMPTP isn't even coming to the table to talk. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Right.
I really think that let's just say it gets to late October. Well, that is in effect basically until January 1, because the industry often stops working after Thanksgiving. I mean,
Yeah.
people still do stuff, but they're like, nope, I gotta go on vacation. This is my 4-week window I actually get to spend with my family out of the year. And so it just kind of dies off at that. So if it gets to like November 10th, we're probably really into it, hurting wise, until January, which means from a SAG perspective or a WGA perspective, or even an AMPTP, they're like, well, might as well go to July or January 1. Like, that's what I think. But dude, I have no idea. I really have no idea.
I know there's a lot of unknowns in the industry. I know people are saying the studios have enough content to last till October, but then they'll be in trouble. There's a lot of rumors going around and things like that. But yeah, it's like no one's working right now. So it's like,
Yeah.
Speculations all across the board. So who knows?
Yeah. That's what I mean. A lot of people have different hypotheses. They always say theories, and I'm like, no, it's not a theory unless it's tested. It's a hypothesis. I hate when movies say that. Oh, what's your theory? And I'm like, oh gosh, it's not a theory. Dang it. It's a hypothesis. Anyways, and before that, it's a postulation, meaning just a thought. Anyways, that's my pet peeve for this podcast. I think that like somebody's postulation really is, one of that was really interesting was like all the studios and networks were letting all of the overall deals die because of force majeure, which is like an act of God, which is a union strike is an act of God, which means they could kill all the deals without having to pay anybody out. So I think that was one definite thing they were doing. Because why not? Like, hey, if we're going to go to strike, let's go to the end of 3 months. Well, we've been in this for 90 days. We could do force majeure. Let's cancel everyone's overall deals and then start over. Smart. I would do that as a business person. I'm like, okay, great. Which means I can end actors deals. I could end writers deals. I could end production deals. I could end so many cost inefficient deals that haven't promised what they were supposed to be. And then I could start over. And when I start over as a network or a studio, I can find 20 younger guns and give them overall deals for the same price I was paying for 3 of the big dogs. If I were studio heads and network people, that's what I would do.
They're doing those waivers for A24 and some other independent movies. But like I was talking to Lee before you got on, and I was like, some of those movies are just going to be sold to the streamers, to companies in the AMPTP. It's kind of like, I don't know. And some actors I think Viola Davis came out and she dropped out of an indie project to stand in solidarity with the actors. How do you feel about those projects that are still shooting?
I think those projects would shut down themselves if SAG-AFTRA said, we'll give you a waiver if you cannot sell to an AMPTP house when it's finished and done and produced. And if that's the case, that it's bullshit. Sorry, can't say that. That it's horse malarkey. So, right, you know that. All right, I'll tell you the truth. I think that SAG, just like any other organization, always protects the people in power. It always does. It doesn't matter because it's the nature of protecting your own. If you don't protect your power base, you lose your own power base. So, like for instance, it's not evil, it's just human nature. I am going to try to find acting and writing roles for professionals with disabilities to help them out before I look for any other class of people because that's where my heart is. So it makes sense that that's what they're doing. However, since they're a union, they should be protecting the lowest among us at the expense of the highest among us, but they don't, because that's not where they don't get their donations or support or votes from. And that's just human nature. What they should do is be supporting the littlest actor. They should be, for instance, I don't know if you know this, but SAG has a cap on union dues. It used to be $250,000. It's risen to 500, and I think next year it's going to 750, and then I think it caps out in 2025 at $1 million. That means if I'm Tom Cruise and I make $20 million a film, I only have to pay dues to SAG, my actors union, up to $1 million. That's it. And so who does that hurt? That hurts the average actor who can't qualify for healthcare because they have to make $24,000 or $25,000 a year just to even make their healthcare. Instead of if Tom or Viola or anybody else had to pay on their whole income salary, then that would allow SAG to lower that $25,000 to around 15, making it much easier for the smaller actor to be able to get healthcare. But they don't do that either. So the fact that SAG is like, you hate the little people, I'm like, hey, SAG, you kind of hate the little people too. So, you know what I mean? Here's
Yeah.
the other part of it though. We're all hypocrites. Every single one of us to some capacity. So it's not me pointing the finger at SAG going, you're a hypocrite, because I am too. So we're all hypocrites for certain reasons in certain capacities because humans are tribal and we like our own tribe and we try to take care of our own. That's just human nature. So yeah, it's a problem, but at the same time, it's like, come on, guys, come on. So, you know, I think we should call out our own and clean up our own house before we're worried about somebody else's front yard.
Fair point. I think that's absolutely valid and would be the best way to go for any of us.
Is there a particular project you've done that you are the most proud of, that if someone was, you show people first?
Oh man, that's huge because there's so many different reasons I'm proud of different projects. Like I did Another Life on Netflix, which was a lot of fun. I love the people I worked with, and my friend AJ Rivera and I are now really, really, really good friends. Like he's coming to my wedding. Like it, so I loved working on that project because I met a really great person. I got a film coming up called Sunrise with Alex Pettifer and Guy Pearce that we shot in Ireland, and I had a blast on it. Plus, if you look at the credits, I produced it. So I came in and got to produce a Guy Pearce film. What? Like, oh, you know, another check mark, right? So I'm starting to produce films. I'm raising money for projects. So if there are people out there that have money that are listening to this podcast that want to support disabled people, let's go. I'm your man. I will help and hook you up. And then Sons of Anarchy, man, that was like kind of like a breakout role. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, that amputee actor can actually ride motorcycles better than regular actors. And I'm like, yeah. And then I've been on all 4 NCISs as a different character, and I'm the first actor on the planet to do that. You know, that came out in Variety like 3 months ago when I did NCIS Hawaii. I was the first actor, not disabled actor, the first actor to do all 4 episodes or all 4 different shows. So there's different reasons I like all of them. I just did Quantum Leap, and I got to work with a director friend of mine, Avi, who I love working with. Part of the team that I sold the Sony show to has Brandon Saunier on it, who's a showrunner, and he's a buddy of mine. He's on the show. Like he's going to be leading the show. Brandon Saunier and Brandon Margulis. And those 2 are 2 awesome showrunners. So that's going to be good. But I guess if I was going to say my favorite thing anyone can watch is Piranaconda. a really, really crappy C movie about a piranha slash anaconda mixture hybrid creature, and we filmed it in Hawaii. And it's the dumbest Sharknado type film I've ever filmed, which meant it was the funnest film to actually ever make because it was so stupid that what we did as an actor really didn't matter. And it was just pure fun.
That sounds like so much fun. I definitely want to check that out.
Funny enough, I've seen that movie because I had a friend who was also in that movie. And I remember when he went to Hawaii and he came back and was talking about the experience.
Yeah, who is that?
His name is Matt. He played
Orlengi?
the boyfriend, or like there's like this like main girl and like there's like a boyfriend, and he played like the boyfriend.
Which Matt?
Last name is Townsend.
Matt Townsend. Okay, yeah. Nice.
So yeah, do you remember him?
Yeah. Well, we were all there when the tsunami and Japanese hit in Hawaii.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
yeah, it was all chaos and everyone was freaking out. We're like, we gotta run. And I'm like, no, we don't. They're like, Kurt, I'm the director. I'm the producer of this film. You're listening to me. I'm like, no, this isn't a movie anymore. This is real life. Shut up. I'm in charge.
Huh.
And they're like, why are you in charge? And I'm like, because I got my master's in hydrogeology and I understand the USGS warning about the tsunami that's coming. Trust me, it's 3 hours away. Let's just slowly get our heads together. Let's put this together. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right.
Huh.
So I was like, okay, guys, let's go. Slow down.
What?
But yeah, it was a
What was
great
your-
experience.
What was your character, or who was your character?
I can't remember the character's name, but I think I made him a character that I based off of what was the guy in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? Hunter S. Thompson. I kind of did that kind of a thing. I was like, oh, yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, well, bats, bats, that kind of a thing. I was just a scientist, or I think no, I was an explosives expert. That's what it was. I can't remember the character's name.
So you don't get eaten then, or you don't die, right? You survive.
Dude, no, I die. It's just I was the only character who didn't die because of the piranhaconda. I died because someone shot me who was getting eaten by the piranhaconda.
Okay. Nice. Because yeah, Matt dies like halfway through. So
yeah, no, I got to work with Michael Madsen on that, and he was just hilarious, dude. I like that guy. A lot of people are like, he's hard to work with, and I know why they think that. But I think it's just because he's awesome and doesn't care about what people think. And I love people like that. I don't know why. I just get along with him. He's like, yeah, this movie sucks. I'm like, I know it sucks. Let's have fun. He's like, oh, you're my kind of people.
I'm like, let's go. I mean, I remember Matt really liked him too. So I'll have to tell Matt that we connected now.
Absolutely.
That's so funny. Small world.
Well,
right?
my call to action is if there's anybody listening or anybody you guys know that has capital, has a company, or has money, I'm working on projects right now that are disabled forward. So if they want to reach out, definitely put them in contact with me, because I have a film fund that is literally going to change the way it operates for disabilities across the globe.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, did you get to keep your cut from Sons of Anarchy, or did you get to keep anything?
I didn't. I asked and they didn't like it because in their first couple of seasons, they let a few people keep their cuts. And then a couple people were dumb enough to not know about clubs and were out wearing them. And the clubs take it very seriously if you have a bottom rocker, because that's technically you claiming territory. And if you're out there claiming territory, they're like, you're not claiming territory. And yeah, this is not your territory. So they take it seriously. So they stopped doing that. Now I knew that in those rules, and so I would have just kept it and put it on my wall. But I thought about stealing it, and I'm like, nah, should I? Shouldn't I? And I almost did, but I didn't.
I got the book. They released that book at the last season where it has like all the deaths in the back and it goes through all the characters. Oh, I love that show so much.
Nice.
So good.
It's a great show, man. Yeah. I did get to keep a Sons of Anarchy ring, like the ring that everybody wears in Sons that says Sons on it.
Oh, nice.
And then, a guy in Australia that I was friends with had a really cool motorcycle company, and he was like the biggest fan of Sons, And I don't try to keep too many trinkets because, you know, having my near-death experience makes me like give up a lot of like earthly goods because I know they don't matter. And so I traded him for another ring of his. So he has it, you know,
Oh,
which is
nice.
kind of cool. So he's pretty stoked. But then I was like, man, maybe I should have kept that one thing, you know? Maybe I'll call him up and try to get it back. I'll be like, I'll give you money for it.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you again, Kurt, for your time and for chatting with us. It's been really fun.
Of course, of course. And I want to extend to you guys, you know, an open invitation to reach out to me personally or anytime, acting questions, writing questions. Hey, do you know anybody to connect me through to here? Consider me an open conduit because everybody with disabilities, we all need to stick together to help each other rise in this industry. And I want to make sure that people with disabilities out there realize that if you help other people succeed with disabilities, it is not going to limit the opportunities for you. It is actually going to make more opportunities for you in the long run. So help other disabled creative people get work.
Yes.
I completely align with that philosophy as well, that it's a win for all of us.
Yeah, no, me too, definitely. And I will definitely hit you up and take you up on that. And we will also link to the fund that we were referring to that you can donate to the actors and, you know, the struggling actors that do make their living off of acting and they can't act right now. So we'll link to that in the description of the podcast as well.
Cool.
And if
Sounds
you guys out there have any other questions for us based on any conversation topics that we've discussed with Kurt today or anything else that comes to mind, feel free to email us at darkroomfilmcast@gmail.com. Once again, that's darkroomfilmcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and thank you so much again, Kurt, for coming on. I'm also glad we got to find, like, not only we were looking for just someone in SAG, but I was like, no, I want to find someone in SAG with a disability because, you know, that's what our show is. That's what we promote. So I'm glad that we got to cover both bases.
Yeah, no, glad to come on, man. I'll come on multiple times. I'll help out however I can. Like, you know, like 100%, like, you know, other podcasts and television shows and whatever else, like reaching out and utilizing my disability for their advantage. We should be reaching out to ourselves for our advantage.
Yeah, I completely
So,
agree. Well, thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
Thank you
And-
guys. I appreciate it. Keep up the great work and let me know how I can promote it.
And we also want to shout out Matt Lauterbach and All Senses Go for making transcripts of this episode and all previous episodes possible. Thank you guys so much for listening and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, see you guys in the next one.
Later.
Bye.